Zach's part of life. Zach was born in a joint family in a small rural village. His family consisted of 12 people: his father, mother, elder brother, him, his 2 younger sisters, and his father's younger brother and his family that consisted him, his wife, and 3 kids, and Zach's grandma. Zach was a bit of a naughty boy in his childhood. Zach's father and his father's younger brother were the 2 only members earning in the family. But in a small village, there is not constant work. Zach's father did whatever work he could do in order to live, like teaching as a drawing teacher at a small school, and a mason, house builder, and many more. If one day Zach's whole family eats food, then for the next 2 or 3 days they have to adjust from water or some little snacks, as every small rural village of that time has to go through. When Zach was 3 years old, he had fallen for a terrible fever. When he was taken to the hospital, the doctor gave a medicine and said to give him 1 milliliter of the medicine daily. But those who don't know a single word of English, how were they supposed to know what is an ml? So they did what they thought that the doctor said. Zach's parents gave him the whole bottle to drink. After some time, he was feeling a pain in his eyes. The next day when he woke up, he couldn't see anything. He was completely blind. He said his parents about this, and then they noticed that Zach's eyeballs were turning blue, as if his eyes were slowly being poisoned. His father took him to the hospital right away. The doctor observed his eyes, and when asking his parents for the cause, he realized that this was actually a side effect. The doctor said he could be cured, but there is no guarantee. At the time, even though his family had it rough, Zach's father started working twice harder. His father would bring 1 day's money to eat for his family, and the second day's to Zach's checkup. Their village was about 7 kilometers away from the hospital. Zach's father would carry him and take him to the hospital even though his father didn't eat anything from days. He never forgot to take him. As after months of checkup, Zach's ability to see returned but not completely. There was still a problem: he couldn't see at night times. Zach had seen his father going to work only by drinking a glass of water, and work for the whole day for bringing money to eat for one time, and again going to work with only drinking a single glass of water. Life was hard, but it made Zach learn a lot from it. With time, when Zach was in his high school, he dropped out as he was not interested in reading. He would wander around, go out somewhere for days, and then come back. He would never sit quietly at home. Most of the time, he would be outside of the house or outside of the village. After some time, when he was at age for working, Zach and his elder brother left the house and went to work at a city very far away from their house. At that time, Zach was about 16 or 17. In the meantime, Zach's first sister married, and even Zach's elder brother was married. Zach and his brother would come home once in many months and return to city after some weeks. Zach and his brother lived in the city for about 7 years. Zach would stay at the city more, but his elder brother wouldn't stay long. Initially, Zach became the only person working from his family. Once, when Zach was in the city, and his village came under a natural calamity, Zach had to return to his village but couldn't, because he of some issues. After about 2 months he went back. When he returned to his village, he couldn't actually find his house. The situation of the village was very bad. Everything was broke. It was tough for whole of the state. After seeing this situation, Zach decided to not return to the city and help his family grow back again. Zach's family had possession over 4 lands for farming, and Zach and his father were the ones who were working in their family. Zach's elder brother would work once in a while. Zach's elder brother didn't have a child, and he was not so caretaking. Zach worked as a mason to help his father, worked at others' land and some other works as well, so the living could go on. Zach worked in his village for about 4 years or so there. His life actually took turn, because he married to a woman in his village. Her name is Sana.
Sana's part of life. Sana was born in the same village as Zach. Sana's family consisted of 8 people. Her father, mother, 5 sisters, and a brother. Sana was 5th child. Sana's father was a very strong and self-respected man. He taught every one of his children all the things that were important in life. Sana's family life was going very good. Sana's sisters were married one after another. But when Sana was about 11 or 12 years old, her father turned paralyzed. Sana, her mother, and her younger brother took care of him. When Sana turned 17 years old, her father died. Sana and her family was going through that shock and was suffering. Sana's mother died right after 1 month of her father's death. Sana's life turned upside down. The only members remaining in her family was her and her brother. Sana's sisters often came home and tried to be there for them both, but they had their own problems. While Sana took care of her younger brother, she did many works. She did work at farm. She worked at a small market near her village and sell some vegetables, and she also took tuition for children of her village. The one who constantly took care of her and her younger brother, as like a real elder brother, was Sana's fourth elder sister's husband. He took care of both of them as if they were his own children. Sana didn't even know where her life was going and only thought about taking care of her bother. She faced a lot of troubles and moved on. When Sana's younger brother came to an age of working, he started to support her sister and took care of the house. Sana decided that her brother should marry first, and all of Sana's sisters and relatives together arranged a marriage for Sana's brother. After some years of her brother's marriage, it was time for Sana's marriage, but she had a problem. She had white spots in her skin, though it was not spread more. There was no guarantee the spots wouldn't spread all over her body. Sana was actually pretty, but because of work in village and not eating properly, her skin had turned black and she was thin as a stick, so the white spots were easily visible. Her brother and relatives searched for an arranged marriage but couldn't find anyone who accepted her with the spots. At last, they found a guy who accepted to marry her, but that guy had bow legs. He had some fruit-selling business, obviously. Sana didn't want to marry him. She declined, and after some time, Sana and Zach decided to marry. And because she didn't accept her brother's offer to marry that bowlegs guy, her brother said everyone from Sana's family and their relatives that if they talked to Sana or have any connections with her, Sana's brother wouldn't have any relation with them. After hearing this, no one tried to talk or connect with her after her marriage. The reason why Sana's brother was against her marriage was because Sana's family was a bit of a good, wealthy family. Not rich, but a good, proper life having family. But Zach's family had it rough that time. Sana's brother saw them less than himself. His ego made him forget all the troubles Sana took for raising her, and he even forget to think about Sana's happiness. Ego does kills humans' true identity. Sana thought that whatever her brother did or whatever her past was like doesn't matter now. Now the only thing that matters is what life keeps now, and thinking that she tried to live a good life in her new house. But she didn't know that life had more problems for her, and life was about to take a 180-degree turn.
Zach and Sana's life together. Zach and Sana started to live their life happily. After about a month, Sana's in-laws started to show their real self. Zach didn't care about his life until he was married. After marrying Sana, Zach noticed the value of life. Before, he would always go outside a village or somewhere else and wander there. But now that he was married, he got to constantly work. Zach started to turn responsible. They spent their time in a city, but not out of the state like where Zach was working, but in a city in their state, and when they returned to their home, it was the time when Zach's family started to show their real nature. They made Zach work more than he could, and would take all the money from Zach and use it on themselves without giving a bit of food to Zach and Sana. They had a house outside of their main house. Zach's family made them both to stay in that house. They would make Zach do work for others, and take the money in advance from those who Zach had to work for. While Zach was working and Sana was doing housework starving, Zach's whole family, his father, his mother, his elder brother, and his wife, and Zach's grandma, would eat plenty. Sana's father and mother-in-law would always treat her bad, scold her, and treat her as if she was the one who was wrong at all costs. But even though Sana was going through all this, she would control her anger as much as she could. Once Zach's father had some problem in stomach, and no one did anything, but when Zach heard this, he rushed to the pharmacy, even though it was night, and he couldn't see properly at night. After some days when Zach was coming from the work at night, Zach couldn't see anything properly, so he was trying to touch things from his hands and going to his house. While he was doing so, Zach's father laughed at him, saying he can't even see. Sana saw this and led Zach to their house. After about 1 year of marriage, Sana was pregnant. Once out of nowhere, Sana's mother-in-law came to her, sat beside her, and cursed her that will she really die, and cutted and shone in the hallway. That meant in their state there was belief that when a pregnant woman dies, they have to tear her stomach open, and have to hang her in the main street of the village. Sana was terrified by the saying and begged in front of the god for her child to be born safely. After months of problems, she gave to birth to a healthy child. One day, when Zach was on his work, Zach's family had already taken the money of his work in advance and ate it all. It was a festival that day. While they gave only a part of the meal to Sana and her child, Zach stood in the place where he was working and found himself alone. As far as he could see, there was no one except him. Zach said to the god that he believed in so much and said, in coming 1 year at this same day, if I find myself in this place again, I don't know what I would do. To that point, Zach had already tried ending his life more than 3 times because of his family's torture. But when he saw Sana's face and his son's face, he would stop thinking that if I die, they would die as well. And then, after about 10 months of Zach's son's birth, his elder brother had a daughter. His elder brother didn't have a child from years, but when God did give him a lovely daughter, she was born handicapped.
One day when Sana was scared to give her son a bath because of fearing his delicate skin, so she asked her mother-in-law to help her. But she said, I worship God in these hands. How do you think In would give him a bath? But Zach's elder brother's daughter's turn came. Her mother-in-law didn't said a thing and happily gave her a bath. There was more torture for them, and a time came when Zach got enough of this torture and thought of going somewhere else and start a new life with Sana. So Zach and Sana both decided to go, but there was not so much money for them both to go out the state. So they decided that Zach should go first, settle there, and come back to take them back. And to the god's miracle, the day Zach left the village was the same day when Zach said to the god to take him somewhere. Zach decided to go and make a living in the most famous and smartest state of the whole country of that time. After going to another state, Zach was in contact with Sana. He would often come to visit the village and check on Sana. Zach thought that if his elder brother also comes here and they both start to work, their family can have a good life. But his brother would use all the money for himself and didn't give anything to Zach or his family. When Sana and Zach's son was about 3 years, he fell into a viral fever. Whenever Sana asked his in-laws to come with her to the hospital, they would say, "Will you give money?" and would send her with anyone who was going in the same direction. Sana's son's fever stayed for 17 days. In the meantime, when Zach was talking with Sana with the phone and heard his mother screaming and scolding Sana, Zach asked what was going on, but Sana said it was nothing and asked Zach to cut off the phone. Zach didn't cut the call and was hearing the whole conversation. Sana was arguing with her mother-in-law, and after hearing the conversation for about an hour, Zach said hello in the phone. Then they both realized that Zach was hearing the whole thing. Zach said, "I am coming to bring you here, pack your things up." Zach took all his savings and sat in the train at the next day. Zach arrived the day next to tomorrow. The time when Zach reached home, their son's fever went down within a fraction, and then, after some days of rest, he took his son and wife, said bye to his family, and came to the city. After about some months, Zach's brother said that, "Why should I take care of my brother's family? I have my own family waiting for me in the village. I will go back to the village," and left. But he didn't know that Zach was never depending on him. Zach and Sana decided to live in the city, even if they die. They wouldn't want to go the living hell. Zach and Sana started their life in a place where they didn't even know the language. But after 2 years of them moving to the city, Zach's grandma died. Zach and Sana went with their son to attend Zach's grandma's funeral. She was the only one who was a bit supportive to Sana and Zach. After that, Zach and Sana only went to the village once in 3 or 4 years. Just to visit their village, they got all that what they deserved. Their son learned in a private school and high school and now is in his pre-university. Their son understood the troubles and is studying hard as well. They completely changed. Sana started to look as pretty as she was. They gained the proper weight and started to have a proper meal and healthy body. They are now living in the city with their son, living good yet little troubled life, as life is twisted as hell. But they are happy now that they can live freely and independently.